My name is Erin, and if there's one thing I've always believed in, it's supporting the people I love, especially my wife, Jane. She had big dreams, and I was always right beside her, pushing her forward, cheering her on, and doing everything I could to help her succeed. I never saw that as a weakness. In fact, I thought it made me a good husband. But life has a way of proving you wrong, sometimes in ways you never expect. Looking back, I can't help but wonder, was I blind? Too trusting? Or was I just a fool who believed that love and loyalty were enough? When you trust someone completely, you never expect them to betray you. But that's exactly what happened. I'm not here to sugarcoat anything or make myself look good. I'm just here to tell the story exactly how it happened, how I lived it. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that life doesn't care about what you think is fair. It doesn't care about how much effort you put in or the sacrifices you make. Jane and I met in college, and from the very beginning, it was clear she was different. She was laser-focused on her future, always talking about her career goals, the kind of job she wanted, and the success she was determined to achieve. She wasn't just ambitious. She was unstoppable, and I admired that about her. I never felt threatened by her success. If anything, I wanted to be the one in her corner, helping her reach any goal she set her mind to. That's just how I was wired. Maybe it was because of how I grew up. My mom was incredibly smart, but she always said marriage had held her back. She felt she could have achieved so much more if she hadn't been weighed down by family responsibilities. That stuck with me. I promised myself that when I got married, I wouldn't be the reason my wife ever felt like she had to choose between me and her dreams. So, when Jane's career started taking off, when she had to work late nights, travel for seminars, and take extra courses, I didn't complain. I told myself this was what I signed up for. I'd come home to an empty house more often than not, eat dinner alone, and sometimes go to bed without her beside me. Yeah, I felt lonely, but I convinced myself it was temporary, a necessary sacrifice. I wasn't one of those insecure men who needed their wife to be home all the time to feel like a man. I took pride in the fact that she was out there making a name for herself. If people called me weak for that, so be it, I didn't care. She was my wife, and she deserved to succeed. But that's not how the story ends. One weekend afternoon, I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, probably checking emails, when a notification popped up, a message from a number I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it was just spam, but when I opened it, I froze. The message was short, just a few words. Your wife is cheating on you. For a second, I just stared at the screen. Then, just as quickly as I opened it, I deleted it. I didn't even think twice about it. People talk. People lie. I knew that better than anyone. Jane was climbing the ranks in her company, and the higher you go, the more enemies you make. That's just how it works. I figured it was someone at work, probably a jealous coworker or some guy she had rejected, trying to stir up drama. And, honestly, I wasn't about to entertain that nonsense. I had no reason to doubt my wife. I shrugged it off, convinced myself it was nothing, and moved on with my day like it never happened. Weeks passed, and I had almost forgotten about that strange message. Life went on as usual. Jane was busy with work, I handled things at home, and we barely had time for long conversations. Then one evening, my phone buzzed again. It was the same unknown number. My first thought, not this nonsense again. But when I opened the message, my stomach dropped. This time, it wasn't just words. It was photos. Jane standing way too close to a man I recognized. I visited her office once and saw him, one of the top executives, someone she worked with closely. In one picture, they were at a restaurant, sitting side by side. In another, they were in what looked like a hotel lobby, Jane's hand resting on his arm. But the one that hit me the hardest? She was laughing, her eyes locked on his. For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen, my mind racing. I exhaled sharply, shook my head, and replied to the sender. Mind your own business. I didn't ask questions. I didn't let doubt settle in. As far as I was concerned, this was just someone trying to stir up drama where there was none. I still trusted my wife, blindly. I remember exactly where I was when I got that third message. It had been weeks since the last one, and honestly, I had convinced myself that ignoring the situation was the right thing to do. Life was easier that way. But then my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. I hesitated before opening it, knowing that whatever was inside would destroy the fragile hope I had been holding on to. This time, it wasn't just photos. The sender introduced herself. "My name is Sandra. I'm the wife of the man your wife is cheating with." I sat there in disbelief. I didn't know this woman. I had never met her. So, why was she messaging me? What did she stand to gain from this? A part of me wanted to believe it was some kind of elaborate lie. Maybe she was a jealous coworker, someone with a grudge against Jane or her husband. People do crazy things when they're bitter. But then the next messages came in. Screenshots. Long conversations between Jane and this man. Messages that were too personal, too intimate. Late-night texts. Words a married woman had no business saying to another man. My hands felt clammy as I scrolled through them. And then came the worst part. A photo. Jane and him. In bed. I stopped breathing. My eyes locked on the screen, unable to look away. I wanted to find something, anything, that could explain this away. But then Sandra sent more proof. The metadata. The timestamp. The location. The date. It was from the work event Jane had attended. The same event she told me was just for networking and team building. The event where she texted me, saying she was exhausted and going to bed early. She hadn't gone to bed alone. I don't know how long I sat there staring at my phone, my mind completely blank. But then another thought hit me. Why was Sandra telling me all this? She had all the evidence to destroy her own marriage. She could have confronted her husband, filed for divorce. Instead, she came to me. I finally typed out a response. "Why are you telling me this? What do you want from me?" Her reply came almost instantly. "Because you deserve to know the truth." And that was the moment everything changed. My wife was cheating on me. Now I had to decide what to do next. I struggled for days. Emotionally, mentally. I didn't need a private investigator. I didn't need to follow her. Sandra had laid everything out in front of me, piece by piece, until there was no room left for doubt. And yet, I still couldn't wrap my head around it. How did we get here? I kept asking myself the same questions, but no answer gave me peace. Should I confront her now? Should I wait? Was there even a way to fix this? I wasn't naive. I knew that once trust was broken, it rarely got rebuilt. But after everything we had been through, could I just throw it all away? Or had she already thrown it away, long before I even knew? If it came down to divorce, I knew I wouldn't have trouble getting custody of our child. Jane was barely home as it was. The courts would see that. But this wasn't just about custody. It wasn't about lawyers or legal battles. This was about my life shattering into a reality I never saw coming. I was married to a woman I no longer recognized. And yet, on the outside, I kept my emotions locked away. Nothing changed. I still moved through my days handling work, going through the motions like I always had. But inside, it was eating me alive. I'd sit at the dinner table with Jane, watching her act like nothing had changed, while I sat there knowing the truth. Weeks passed, and I still didn't have an answer. I was stuck between action and hesitation, not knowing what would hurt more, confronting her or waiting for her to dig her own grave. But then, the decision was made for me. The company party changed everything. One night, Jane mentioned an upcoming company event over dinner. A casual conversation. But then she added that she wasn't going. That didn't sit right with me. Jane thrived in professional settings. She lived for networking, for climbing higher, for making connections that could push her forward. And these company parties? They weren't just social gatherings for her. They were opportunities. She never missed them. Not once. But I didn't press her on it. If she didn't want to go, that was her choice. Who was I to question it? Besides, I had my own work to focus on, a packed schedule that day. So I let it go. Fast forward to the afternoon of the party. My phone buzzed. Sandra. By now, I knew that whenever she messaged me, it was something I needed to see. I opened it immediately. A screenshot. Jane and her boss, texting back and forth. But they weren't discussing work. They were making plans. plans for that night. The same night she told me she wasn't going to the company party. I immediately called her.
The phone rang.
No answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. And at that moment, everything clicked. I wasn't confused anymore. I knew exactly what was going on. I exhaled, put my phone down, and just sat there for a moment. Then I made my decision. I was going to the party. When I arrived, the venue was alive with laughter and clinking glasses. I recognized a few faces from past work events, but none of them mattered. I was a man on a mission. Jane was supposed to be at home, but according to the text, she was here. And she wasn't alone. I moved through the crowd, keeping my expression neutral, casual. I greeted a few people, asked in passing if they had seen Jane. Each time, the answer was the same. Yes, she was here earlier. That confirmed it. Now I just had to find her. I scanned every table, every group, every corner. Nothing. After what felt like forever, I stopped a waiter carrying a tray of champagne flutes. Have you seen Jane? Jane Miller? He barely had to think before answering. I think she stepped out into the hallway. He nodded toward the back of the venue. My legs moved faster than my mind could process. The further I walked, the quieter it got. The sounds of the party faded, muffled by thick walls. The hallway was dimly lit, long shadows stretching across the floor. And then, at the far end of the corridor, I saw them.
Jane.
And him. They were close. I didn't need to be a genius to know what was happening. 100 thoughts crashed into me all at once. And before I could stop myself, her name slipped from my mouth. Jane. She flinched, like she had been electrocuted. The executive turned sharply, his face shifting from shock to guilt in seconds. Jane's eyes widened, her mouth opening slightly, but no words came out. For a split second, the world froze. How long had this been going on? How many times had I sat at home, thinking she was working late, when really she was with him? I didn't have an answer. And in that moment, I didn't need one. I turned around and walked away. No words. No explanations. There was nothing left to say. I sat on the couch, lost in thought. Jane finally came home. She walked in, dropped her purse, and just stood there, staring at me. Then, with the most emotionless voice, she said, "It was just a one-time thing." I wanted to laugh at how ridiculous that sounded, but I didn't. She just stood there, arms crossed, like she was bracing for impact. So I pulled out my phone.
I didn't speak.
I just swiped through the pictures, the texts, the proof that had been eating me alive for months. Then I turned the screen toward her, and I watched her face closely. She had no comeback. No more excuses. No fake apologies. Just silence. And in that moment, I knew there was nothing left to save. I had spent years believing in her, pushing her forward, trusting that we were a team.
But now,
all I could think about was how easily she had thrown it all away, and how easy I had made it for her. I had built my marriage on the idea that support meant sacrifice. That if I truly loved Jane, I had to step back and let her grow, even if that meant being alone more often than not. And maybe that was my biggest mistake. Thinking that just because I was willing to put her first, she would do the same for me. But I was wrong. I gave her freedom, and she used it to betray me. And the worst part? She never would have stopped if I hadn't caught her. If Sandra hadn't sent me those messages, Jane would have kept lying to my face, coming home late, kissing me goodnight with the same mouth. A few days after I caught them, Sandra gave me an update. She was filing for divorce. While I was sitting here, still trying to process everything, still wondering if I should fight for my marriage or let it go, she had already made peace with the truth. And somehow, that made everything clearer for me. It was only a matter of time before I walked away too. One of the biggest lessons I learned? Blind trust can destroy you. People say trust is the foundation of a good marriage. But that's not the full truth. Trust without accountability. That's just an invitation to be played for a fool. Looking back, I see how I let my love for Jane turn into something unhealthy. I wasn't just being a supportive husband. I was putting her needs, her goals, her career, above my own self-respect. I convinced myself that being a good man meant giving her space to grow, not questioning things, making excuses for her distance. But supporting your partner should never mean sacrificing your dignity. Love should be a two-way street. The moment you start feeling like you're the only one making sacrifices, that's the moment you need to stop and really think about what's happening. And let's be real. Cheating isn't something that just happens out of nowhere. It's not a one-time mistake. It's a pattern of choices. A series of moments where someone has the chance to stop but doesn't. Jane didn't just trip and fall into an affair. She made a choice to text that man. A choice to meet up with him. A choice to lie to me.
To sneak around.
To betray everything we built together. It didn't happen overnight. It happened over time. And I was too blind or too hopeful to see it. So now I have to ask you, what would you have done? If you got that first anonymous message, would you have ignored it like I did? If your spouse was coming home late all the time, acting distant, would you have brushed it off? Or would you have started paying attention sooner? I want to know, would you have seen the truth before it was too late? And that brings me to the last thing I keep asking myself. The thought that won't leave my head. I believed I was doing the right thing. But in the end,
Was I?